On 23rd June 1757, a small battle determined the future of British power in India. It was fought between Robert Clive and Siraj ud Dowlah at Palashi and featured the famous betrayal by Mir Jafar, to the extent that the phrase Mir Jafar has come to mean traitor in Bengali and Urdu. Around 500 people died in the battle. But how could such a small battle have such massive ramifications for the subcontinent? And could the Nawab have been defeated if the English were not helped by insiders? 10-minute histories attempts to explain the complex plots behind the simplistic and almost fake good Nawab betrayed by his evil general theory. First, let us understand the prevailing conditions in the Indian subcontinent and in Europe. The Bengal Subah was the wealthiest province in the Mughal kingdom, and the declining Mughal court relied heavily on Bengal for its revenue. Provincial divans were responsible for collection of taxes and remitting these faithfully to the emperor. To extract taxes, the Nawabs often used brutalities like imprisonment, flogging, and even drowning people in feces. By the 1680s, Emperor Aurangzeb had reimposed Islam's draconian non-Muslim tax, the jizya, on the Hindus of Dhaka. Professor Richard Eaton says that the Mughals' feeling of alienation from Bengal was accompanied by a sense of superiority or condescension towards its people. Mughal officials experienced great differences between Bengal and the culture of North India in matters of language, dress, and diet. The language of the Nawabs was Persian, so few aristocrats were connected to the people on the ground. They were more like necessary evils for preventing other foreign invaders from plundering their lands. Alivardi Khan was born to a Turkish or Arab father in the Deccan. He first became a general and later a deputy subadar in Bihar. In 1740, he killed the sitting Nawab Sarfaraz and declared himself the Nawab of Bengal. By befriending immensely powerful people like the Jagat Seth bankers, he ensured the finances of his province flourished. But as soon as he came to power, he faced multiple raids from the Marathas. These raids killed lakhs of people, and in 1751, the Nawab agreed to pay the Marathas tribute to keep the peace. The English East India Company sought permission from the Nawab to dig up a trench around their Calcutta fortification to protect the people and goods. This trench became known as the Maratha Ditch. Delhi was facing severe attacks from the Afghans, whose savage warriors raped, murdered, and looted everyone and everything in their path. The Mughal emperor faced this onslaught helplessly and was terribly weak to help the Bengal Nawab with his problems. Under the English, Calcutta had grown into a bustling trade city of over 2 lakh people. While their city was separated into the white town for Europeans and black town for Indians, they were known not to discriminate between Muslims and Hindus. It is remarkable that the Europeans mingle with the Hindus and Muslims and even participate in their festivals, wrote a historian. Intermarriage also became commonplace, though Hindu and Muslim women who took European partners were not considered respectable. The final major French establishment, Chandernagore, was about 50 kilometers from Calcutta. The French and English were locked in a global conflict, now called the Seven Years' War. Their struggle for supremacy extended beyond Europe into America and India. The French noted the weakness of English defenses in Calcutta, and the English directed Captain Drake of Calcutta to strengthen his fortifications with permission from the Nawab. Drake, however, began the work without taking permission. At this time, the English received false intelligence that a large fleet of French ships was heading for India. In their panic, they sent Robert Clive, the victorious and now rich officer from the Carnatic, back to India on his second stint. Siraj ud Dowlah was Alivardi Khan's grandson and chosen heir. He was in his early 20s, of average build, and known for indulgences of every kind. His cousin Ghulam Hussain Khan calls him a bisexual serial rapist who took any person of either sex who took his fancy. He would carry off Hindu women who were bathing in the river. He deliberately rammed his ship into other boats to spring a leak in order to watch people struggle and drown. People trembled at the sight of Siraj-ud-Dawla, and many secretly hoped someone else may succeed the ailing old Alivardi Khan. Mir Jafar was Alivardi's general and an Arab by birth. He too, like Alivardi, had come to India as a penniless adventurer. He already had one blemish on his record. In 1747, he had retreated in the Battle of Burdwan without opposing the Marathas, and Alivardi Khan had to step in to win the battle on his own. News of the English fort building activities reached Siraj-ud-Dawla's ears in 1756. Mir Jafar and the Nawab promptly marched to Calcutta from Murshidabad with 70,000 men and took the city with minimum resistance on 19th June 1756. The surrendered garrison was treated well at first, but a skirmish broke out. Then all survivors were stuffed into a small room overnight, where about 40 people died unable to breathe. This inflicted a deep wound in English minds. The EIC's flourishing Calcutta trade suddenly came to a halt. In normal circumstances, the traders would have negotiated with the Nawab to reinstate their privileges. But luck had it that Robert Clive and the Royal Artillery had just arrived on the Coromandel coast to fight the French. The enemy suddenly changed. By December 1756, Clive's ships were sailing up the Ganga, attacking the fortifications from the river and retaking Calcutta. On 3rd January 1757, Robert Clive declared war on the Nawab. The Nawab retaliated. In 2 weeks, he surrounded Calcutta with 60,000 troops. Robert Clive sprang a surprise night attack with a small battalion of troops and a few artillery guns. They shot through the February fog, hoping to kill the Nawab, but failed. They did manage to kill 1,500 Murshidabad infantrymen, 600 cavalry and 4 elephants. The Nawab was scared. He retreated and signed the Treaty of Alinagar, which restored English trading privileges. Inspired by this success and a burning hatred of the French, Clive then marched on Chandanagar and took the French trading outpost in March, much to the Nawab's annoyance. Robert Clive was then preparing to return to Madras at this point, when the people who hated and feared Siraj-ud-Dawla saw an opportunity and reached out to him. Mir Jafar, who felt he had been sidelined by the Nawab, as well as the Jagat Seth, who had been slapped and threatened with circumcision by the despotic Siraj-ud-Dawla, sided with the company. The Jagat Seth, who had earlier helped Alivardi Khan become Nawab, now planned to depose his grandson. The French official Jean Law calls them the originators of the revolution. Without them, the English would have never carried out what they have, he said. By 4th June, Clive had a deal in place which promised him great personal riches and the army an annual maintenance fee. On 13th June 1757, Clive accused Siraj-ud-Dawla of breaking the Treaty of Alinagar and marched towards Plassey with a small army of 800 Europeans, 2,200 South Indian sepoys and 8 cannon. Throughout his journey, he anxiously wrote to Mir Jafar, imploring him to break away from the Nawab and join with his army. Mir Jafar didn't reply. Clive wrote again, then again. As Siraj-ud-Dawla's massive army of 42,000 infantrymen, 20,000 cavalry and 59 artillery pieces approached Clive, Mir Jafar finally answered him in short ambiguous letters, which made Clive even more tense. Finally he wrote on 21st June, "If you will join me at Plassey, I will march halfway and meet you. Then the whole Nawab's army will know I fight for you, and you will be Subah of these provinces. But if you cannot, I will be forced to make peace with the Nawab." On 23rd June, Clive's forces were camped in a dense mango grove with their backs against the bends of the river Bhagirathi, with no turning back. At 8 a.m., the cannonade began. Clive was afraid of being encircled. He marshaled his troops around. Towards noon, the skies darkened and a massive downpour began. The torrential monsoon storm soaked the battlefield, turning the ground into a muddy swamp. and the Mughal gunpowder became wet and useless. Siraj's gun had fallen completely silent. Thinking the same would have happened to the English guns, Siraj's general Mir Madan commanded a cavalry charge. It was doomed from the get-go. The English had covered their guns and their cannons roared back to life. The charge was decimated. Mir Madan died after being hit by a cannonball. Pandemonium broke loose. In the middle of this terror, a huge contingent of Mughal cavalry on the left began to withdraw. They left the fighting. Mir Jafar had withdrawn as promised. Siraj-ud-Daulah feared for his life and fled the scene. At the end of the day, the Mughals lost 500 men, the English just 22. Siraj-ud-Daulah was later captured and executed by Mir Jafar's son Miran, who then wiped out all the women of the house of Alivardi Khan. The remains of Siraj-ud-Daulah were paraded through the streets and Clive got the money he was promised. The Arab Mir Jafar became the first dependent Nawab of the English East India Company with no real power, thus signaling the end of Muslim rule in Bengal. This was the beginning of the British Raj.